Story 1. If you have a medical device that uses electricity, you can send your prescription to the electric company and they cannot legally turn your electricity off if you do not pay your bill. I am not referring to maintenance, fire protection, or power outages. I do not know why I need to explain this. Also, I do not know if it will affect your credit score or anything along those lines. Story 2. My wife was once employed by a large glass warehouse in the Midwest. Her job was to 1. Open a box of glassware from Poland. Open a box that says Made in USA with the company logo. Transfer glassware from box A to box B. Seal box B and put box A into the bundler. This is a regional operation, so exposing them wouldn't help anyone. Management said this was legal, and the building has been there for 20 years doing it and is still in operation today. Story 3. Health insurance, dude. When you file a claim, it is often denied because they are counting on you not escalating it. Once you do, your case goes to a medical management group, which ought to be called the We Don't Want to Pay group. Keep escalating and involve your doctor. Fight for the insurance you paid for. Story 4. I used to work at a factory that made United States military boots and shoes. Looking perfect was far more important than comfort. Some for the Navy were difficult to get the back height right when sewing and forming the leather, so when the soles were attached, they were adjusted to look level. Essentially, the sole of the left or right boot would be much thicker than the other. I've seen some off by half an inch or 15 millimeters. I constantly brought it up to management, explaining that it was essentially the same as having a piece of half-inch board taped to the bottom of the boot and would be extremely uncomfortable walking the 20 miles a day like they do. They didn't care as long as it looked good. Story 5. My aunt worked building chicken houses for large poultry companies. When you pay the extra couple of dollars for free-range eggs, you feel you're doing the right thing. A lot of these companies have free-range chicken houses that leave the doors open. The chickens can come and go as they please. However, the companies install large fans at the doors that make the chickens afraid to leave the chicken houses, forcing them to stay inside. The whole free-range thing is ultimately misleading. Story 6. There's almost always mold in the ice machine. Both my significant other and I have worked in many restaurants. You'll live, but it's still gross. I always ask for no ice. Story 7. Your 401k money might be held at a large reputable company, but it's likely managed by a different and much smaller company you've never heard of. And maybe that small company's information technology is so poor that your social security number is stored in plain text on multiple very old and insecure databases. Story 8. The insurance company's target for you paying on life insurance is about 10 years. It's long enough to have made back the commission and expenses plus some profit. After that, they will make it easier and easier for you to forget to pay for it and have it lapse. There will suddenly be an issue with automatic payments, things like that. But why? If the policy is lapsed when you die, there is absolutely no payout despite 10 years of premiums. That's why. Story 9. The Radisson Hotel has a yes, I can policy. If they are capable of doing something for you as a guest and you ask directly, they are supposed to say yes and maintain a positive attitude toward providing you with satisfying services. Always show up early for check-in and ask for an upgrade. This is how I go from $250 a night in a regular room to $250 a night for a jacuzzi suite every time I travel. Story 10. I used to work for a vegan chocolate bar company in Portland called Honey Mama's. My coworkers would occasionally find metal shards in our chocolate bars from the mixers grinding the vats. And when brought up to management, they would force us to keep wrapping and packing so they didn't have to recall the bars. Story 11. Never put your information into any online financial form that claims to compare shop for you. They don't compare shop for you. They sell your information to 4 to 5 of the highest bidders, and your phone will be overwhelmed with calls and texts for weeks with people trying to sell you their financial products. Sorry. Story 12. Half the information technology systems in the oil and gas industry were built in the 1970s and 1980s and have only a handful of consultants who can even work on them. These individuals are paid hundreds of thousands of dollars a year to be on retainer and sometimes go years without being called in. I have worked with dozens of companies in the sector and have yet to see a publicly listed company where this isn't the case. At the top, they all pretty much use systems, applications, and products. But there's some outdated technology underneath that feeds information into systems, applications, and products from a computer that's lucky if it runs disk operating system. I've seen entire floors of personnel dedicated to manually inputting that information. Story 13. Oh, I used to work for a big regional farm company that grew berries as well as bought berries from other farms. They packaged them and sold frozen berries under their own name as well as for Fred Meyer, Trader Joe's, Albertsons, and others. The farms they bought berries from were supposed to get certain checks done before we would accept their fruit. They needed to ensure their water source did not contain E. coli, test the soil, have people inspect the berries to remove bugs, and prove that their fertilizer and pesticides were approved by my company. At the end of the season, maybe 2 of the 50 or so farms we bought from had actually done everything. We were just happily letting people get affected by their frozen fruit. Story 14. The dirty little secret of Silicon Valley is churn. At peak startup boom, you'd have companies valued at billions of dollars with something like 30% year-over-year customer retention. This means that enterprises were spending millions of dollars on software licenses that their employees rarely used. In one startup I worked at, an account was considered healthy or unlikely to churn if 5% of seats were utilized at least twice per month. Story 15. I worked in advertising for a large publisher. We used to sell digital ads called a fireplace, essentially 3 ads that surround the page on a desktop screen. The publisher would sell the impressions, how many times someone sees a page or ad, of these ads times 3 for each page instead of them being one-page view. When I pointed out that this was fraudulent, I was made redundant with a generous payout as long as I kept my mouth shut. That was at least 5 years ago now, though. Story 16. Oh, I've got so many. I used to work for Apple. The one that probably surprises people the most is that the level of support you get totally varies depending on how wealthy you are and how likely an issue can come back to affect the company negatively. To explain, there are varying levels of support. You have consumer support, then you have support for enterprise and education, Apple internal support called partner relations, but it is only applicable to employees and vendors of a certain level in most cases, and finally VIP support. Consumer support is just how it sounds. Any regular person that can call the toll-free number can get help. Nothing special. Enterprise and education support requires a contract. Someone buying 15 devices for their business means nothing to Apple. You can complain all you want about how your business needs this. The call will end and someone will take a good 3 minutes to laugh at you and tell their boss. The contracts are really hefty too. On the low end, it's usually around $250,000 for tech and services for 3 years. Some universities have terms that last for a decade and are several $1 million, though. Partner relations covers a few things. Some of it is worker support, like if a store has a tech issue and needs to report it. It also covers safety escalations. If your phone ever shocked you or your Mac smells smoky, they get involved, and broader issue escalations. They cover widespread issues and develop solutions to them by working alongside engineers and programmers. However, most of the time they never talk to customers, only Apple employees. When they do talk to a regular consumer, it's a big deal and likely being done to avoid any legal issues. VIP support is basically what everyone thinks Apple should do for everyone. However, it's pretty much only available by being connected in some way. Celebrities, executives, various other wealthy people, they get treated special. When you sign up, you get assigned a special support ID and a dedicated advisor, so you pretty much just have one person that helps you constantly. That person may have at most 3 to 5 people they're assigned to, and they're paid a handsome salary to be on call for them 24/7. If Taylor Swift has someone call in at 2:45 in the morning because she needs someone to trigger the Find My alarm for her phone, you've got to get up and do it. If The Rock's phone gets broken during a workout because a weight fell on it accidentally, even at 4 in the morning, he can have someone call in and get a new phone sent to him directly in about 2 hours. If SpongeBob's voice actor, Tom Kenny, wants someone to help him know how to connect his iPhone to a projector in the middle of the day, he can have someone talk it through with him step by step, and they'll even go and speak to the projector manufacturer themselves if something goes wrong. Outside of special promotional offers, some of which are in gift bags at events like the Academy Awards and the Grammys, it's generally a paid service. When I worked there, it was $50,000 per year, but I'd imagine it's gotten more expensive since then. Story 17. Being kind is cheap to do but gets such results. I always include candy with return merchandise authorization or exchanges of hardware. The stuff I send in comes back faster and is more often than not an upgrade over what was sent. I ask agents if there's a quality assurance report or survey for them, stating I'm happy to fill it in. Being polite, saying please and thank you, and treating someone as a human, not as a rage dump, is effective. Story 18. Former burned dairy cashier when I was in college. If you live near a burned dairy in New York and the northeastern United States, there is a good chance that the Walmart milk is also burned dairy milk. They and Stewart's are the top milk providers in that region. Stewart's and burned dairy also have a huge rivalry. Don't get ice from the ice machine. They don't clean it often enough at burned convenience stores. It's appropriate to ask the last time the coffee or soup was changed. Coffee is supposed to be refreshed every 30 minutes on a busy day. The soup sometimes gets unpleasant, and they just stir it rather than change it. Buy the burned dairy thermos. Coffee becomes a lot more affordable with the discount you get. It's worth it. If the pizza looks dried out in the case, don't get it. They should have thrown it out an hour ago. Story 19. My first assignment at my new job for a Fortune 500 company was to hack a security patch from a slightly newer but still outdated version of PHP into our ancient version of PHP that we had been custom building because we couldn't get it pre-built for our operating system. We cared about security enough to cover our vulnerabilities, but not enough to run modern software. This wasn't just used in an old machine that ran a report once a month. This was an integral part of our core software as a service platform. They assigned me this despite having no indication that I knew anything about C code. I had been hired for a job that included some light scripting and automation. If I had made a mistake, it would have been a severity 1 incident and quite expensive. If I had been nefarious, I could have hacked anything into that binary. I guess they judged well enough because I did it without breaking things. Story 20. So, a lot of people in Asia do business like this. It's an all-day event, sometimes even lasting a few days. They take you to a luxurious dinner where you eat the best food. Then you might go to a luxury spa, enjoy a massage, have tea time, or engage in activities like bowling in a giant high-rise. You may be taken to an exclusive VIP establishment for executives, where you can relax in rooms with soft beds and TVs. The experience often convinces you to agree to the deal, and it works most of the time. Story 21. When people submit their videos to viral social media pages, they immediately sign the rights of the video away to the company. But people rarely ever read the fine print on the submission forms, so they don't realize. Story 22. If you buy a new game from GameStop and it's not in the shrink wrap, there's a pretty decent chance that an employee has taken home and played that copy of the game. Story 23. Public transportation company. Most of the buses that were active back then haven't passed inspection for about 10 years, and the inspections approved the buses to be on the road every time. Until one of the bus's braking systems failed and ran over a couple of people while the driver was uphill. Everyone in the company knew about these types of practices, and multiple times we would report this to human resources and authorities, but they never replied. As soon as that accident happened, there was an internal investigation by the authorities. They found out the reports from the employees were not investigated internally or reported accordingly since human resources never looked at them. Now, the poor bus driver is in jail for that incident, and the company went bankrupt in less than 2 months afterward. It was a disaster. Story 24. Hotel industry. Of course, club members get priority when it comes to upgrades, but even if you are not a member, you are more likely to get a free upgrade if you list doctor as your prefix. Story 25. I will flat out just say do not trust any diamond grading report that is not from the Gemological Institute of America. I worked for another diamond grading lab that worked with retail jewelers, and the boss would adjust the grades to help them. Story 26. When I was younger, I had a summer job at a bakery. Everything was frozen, but the whole community thinks it is homemade. They get away with it by saying everything is baked fresh daily. That is technically true, but it was frozen first. They would not even use their dumpsters to throw out the packaging and boxes. Story 27. Almost everything on a quote to work on your car is negotiable. Most dealerships use matrix pricing on parts. That means you are paying more than the manufacturer's suggested retail price. Most manufacturers have a 32 to 35% markup on parts. So if the part costs the dealership $100, the average manufacturer's suggested retail price would be about $135. I have seen dealerships that did a cost plus 100% matrix, so the customers would be charged $200 for that same part. Do not be afraid to ask for a discount.